This is, obviously I didn't expect to see you all here this week, but we do have the entire staff in, which I try to do every couple of years. I try to get everybody from Washington to spend at least a week in Missouri at the same time. So everyone came in earlier in the week, and they've spent the week going various places depending on what their issue portfolio is. And so many of you may have seen some of my staff this past week in various places, but all 40, I think we're missing 2 people. I mean, we got 48 people are down the hall busy figuring out how we can do our jobs better, and so it's great that I have a chance just to say hello. I don't really have anything I want to share with you. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Let me see if I can guess what some of them might be, and I'll quickly address it. I don't think Employee Free Choice Act will pass this year. Unless it's modified and a compromise is reached by the 2 sides. And there are talks ongoing about modifications and compromises as it relates to card check. I do think that we will consider the Markey legislation, the Waxman-Markey legislation on cap and trade, but the economic climate that we're in right now is probably a help to getting that bill where it needs to be for me to vote for it. Because I'm not going to vote for anything that is going to foist too many costs and expenses on a state that is as coal dependent as we are. And also, we have to be very, very careful about our international competitiveness. It would be ironic, out of one side of our mouths, we talk about how we've got to maintain some kind of manufacturing base in the United States. And then in the other side of our mouth, we say, but we're going to put a whole bunch more costs on manufacturing in the United States so that we are going to encourage all those companies that are on the bubble and trying to decide if they want to continue to make things here. They decide they go to India or China, where they're putting up a coal-fired plant every 10 minutes. I think an eye towards that international competitiveness is very, very important as we craft this legislation, both in terms of how we use the allocations and the timing requirement as to how it is phased in and over what period of time. So I am one of those, I don't know if you all are familiar with the letter that was written after the legislation was considered last year, but I was one of those Democrats that signed that letter that said, we cannot go for this unless there are major changes made. So we have a good moderate group of Democratic senators. There are not very many moderate Republican senators left because most of them got beat. And so really what you have is you only have a handful of people on the Republican side, but they're important because they come in the room with us. We got $100 billion worth of program spending out of the stimulus bill because it wasn't really something that was going to create jobs. It was just going to add to the deficit. We did that with a group of about 3 Republicans, and there were about 5 or 6 of us, where we went in the room and said, we are not going to vote for this unless you pull this $100 billion worth of spending out that was programmatic spending as opposed to stimulus spending. We were fighting the forces that wanted to use the stimulus to fix every problem in America, which of course this is a bad time to do that as it relates to our spending. So why don't I know that many of you were concerned about cap and trade and about FCA, so I wanted to cover those 2 briefly, and then let me just open it up and see if you guys have any questions. I can stay for about 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes. Or the natives are restless down the hall. I don't want to be gone too long, or they're gonna set a goal that I must do outreach every Saturday and Sunday through the rest of the year. I want some weekends with my family this year, so if I leave it to them, they schedule me 25 hours out of every 24, so I can't leave them alone too long, or they'll set a goal I don't buy in on. So yeah.
Where do you think the estate taxes are headed?
I think we're going to end up with $3.5 million, probably. It may be as high as 4, but I think 3.5 is the most likely estate tax exemption, and a rate that is, I would say, between 30 and 35 on what's over the $3.5 million. So I think that is probably the compromise that will end up being. Now, don't shoot me if I'm wrong, but I think that's most likely where we'll end up.
Do you think it will be indexed?
Beg your pardon?
Do you think it will be indexed?
It may be indexed, yeah. I mean, it may be indexed at you know, 5 million and 10 million and 20 million and go up more, but not significantly.
I didn't make myself clear. Do you think it will be indexed for inflation? In other words, if $3.5 or $4 million
Yeah.
is the...
Yeah, I think we will index it. I think we will index it. Especially if we set it at, you know, 3.5. You know, if it goes higher than that, you know, then that's when, you know, those are all the variables that are being moved around the table. But there is really, I think everybody needs to take a deep breath. There is no one that I know of. Well, I take that back. Bernie Sanders maybe, but you know, there's just a few very liberal senators that want to do away with, I mean, that want to reinstate it for everyone. You know, have no exemptions and so forth. So I just think this, the vast majority of the Senate wants to make sure we have a meaningful estate tax exemption for small businesses and farmers. Yeah.
Yes, Senator, you had indicated about FCA that it would take some compromise to get that passed. What kind of compromise would it take?
Oh, I think management would probably have to agree to give up card check on decertification. You know, right now, it's, you know, I like to tease my friends in business. I say, well, if card check is so evil, how come you guys do it to get rid of unions? We ought to have a secret ballot to get rid of unions if we're requiring a secret ballot on the front end. Because, you know, that's when a lot of pressure is brought to bear on decert. And I can give you specific examples of where management, after a successful organizing campaign by secret ballot, has spent 2.5 years fighting the contract just to get the time in so then they can go for decert by check. And they go around and put the pressure on everybody to check the card to decert. So I think that is a likely compromise, and frankly, it's interesting that business is balking as much as it is about a secret ballot for decert. But I think that's potentially a compromise that we could do that would, and you know, making sure that it's very clear that the secret ballot is an option. You know, I think there's some confusion about the language in the bill right now as to whether or not it's mandating card check or whether it is, and frankly, I think in most instances, if secret ballot is an option for people, they're going to choose it. You know, so those are the kinds of things that are being talked about. Yeah.
Claire, I'm the military advisor from the chamber, so since you're on.
I'm shocked. Just shocked. Didn't know you were even interested.
Well, if you have any small comments from your Senate position on armed services about Operation Enduring Freedom, with Afghanistan, any comments?
Well, I can tell you that even though North Korea is acting out and obviously is a grave concern, that the top level leadership in the military and the top level leadership literally in the White House are more concerned about Pakistan and Afghanistan, but particularly Pakistan right now because of the strategic importance of Pakistan for a variety of different reasons, and obviously they have nuclear capability. And it is very troubling what is going on in terms of internally the power struggle in Pakistan right now. And Afghanistan, I think, I think everything's going fine. I think they've got good goals. I think we have a good plan as it relates to Afghanistan. The only thing that we continue to focus on is making sure we have supply lines. Getting our stuff in and out of there is hard. In fact, most people don't know this. NATO uses Iran. NATO goes right through Iran with all their, obviously we don't go through Iran. So it makes it a little trickier, and we're having to obviously continue to negotiate with the stands, all of those countries, in terms of getting our supply lines through. So, but they're comfortable. We have alternatives. We just want to make sure we don't get in a situation where they could cut off a supply line and then we'd have our guys in trouble because we couldn't get stuff to them that they needed. So, but you know, and I think the drawdown in Iraq is going relatively well. You know, you're going to have some chaos that occurs as we pull out, but that would be true if we pulled out 20 years from now. It doesn't matter when we pull out. There's going to be some chaotic activity as people kind of test each other, particularly some of the more extreme factions within the Sunnis and the Shiites in terms of that stuff. So, you know, my friend the president likes to say it would really be nice if all I had to worry about right now was North Korea, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iraq. But obviously the economy has been a huge part of what they've had to deal with the first 2 or 3 months. So.